What's up, guys? My name is Jay Wynn. I'm a full-time poker pro out of the Austin, Texas area, a content creator, and a poker coach over at pokercoaching.com. I wanted to review some of the most interesting hands that I played over the past month and create a video detailing the strategy, some of the questions that I had and thought about while I was playing the hand, as well as open the discussion in terms of how you guys think they should be played. Regularly reviewing hands that I play is a big part of my schedule. I'm always looking for ways to improve. So if you guys have a comment, feel free to post down below. But in today's video, we're going to use strong fundamental ranges, solver outputs, and data points to go through some of the hands that we played. And we're going to identify what we did well and what we can do better. All right. So in this next hand, we go heads up with Doug Polk. The game is massive. The blinds are 25, 50, 100, and effective stacks are over 30K deep. So that's 300 big blinds plus. What really stands out for this particular hand is that we right away flop a set against a board where we have strong range and nut advantage, but we decide to check. And there was a lot of opinions on the way this particular hand was played. So it was really important for me to take a step back, run it through a solver, and try to get as much information as we could. But before we get into all of those key points, let's go ahead and get into the hand because it's a really good one. So it folds to Doug in the hijack, and he opens it up to 250. On to me in the small blind, and here's what our range looks like. We don't have a flatting range, and we're just going to be looking to 3-bet a ton with our best suited aces and linearly with all of our pairs 9s and higher. With pocket queens, it's a pretty easy decision. We're going to 3-bet it right here. Now, the only other thing to note is that we're playing a small button ante game where everybody on the button contributes $25 or $50 to the button, but only the small blind can win. So currently there's roughly about $700 on the button, and that's going to do two things. It's going to make the small blind bluff more, and it's going to make other people defend more. But once again, with pocket queens, pretty easy decision here. We're just going to 3-bet it. So facing a 1.1K 3-bet, Doug decides to make the call, and here's roughly the range that I'm putting him on. He's going to be defending with a lot of his pairs, suited connectors, suited aces, and continue to 4-bet with some of his best hands. One thing to note that while this is a mixed strategy, I wouldn't be surprised if Doug is calling with more as well as 4-betting more than this preset strategy, for example. At the end of the day, Doug is a lot more experienced than I am. He knows that. He also really prides himself on his post-flop playability and skills, and so pretty natural for him to call with more or 4-bet more and take advantage of his position and see if there's any mistakes that I'll make. So fast forwarding to the flop. The flop is ace, king, queen, rainbow, which is really pretty interesting. We're going to have a really big nut and range advantage on this particular board. And process-wise, we should be betting a ton. Over at pokercoaching.com, we have a lot of tools that helps with process-driven poker. And there's a bunch of flow charts that can really help make these decisions easy to understand. Let me go ahead and just share a couple of things real quick. So here's a pretty cool graphic. It's one of many flow charts that you can find over at the pokercoaching.com set of tools. And it helps us mitigate how we want to treat certain board textures and exact coding that we have, and of course the range that we have as well. So let's go ahead and refer to the right side of the chart. To determine our play and also our sizing, the first question we want to ask is, do we have nut advantage? On ace, king, queen, of course we do, and the answer is yes. Now the next question that we want to ask ourselves is there range connectivity? And also, again, the answer is yes, since the board is very, very connected and it's very easy for us to have a lot of hands here. So if we have the nut advantage and if we have range connectivity, generally speaking, we can use a large sizing. But let's take a look at what action I decided to take. So I actually deviate from this flow chart and also what the solver is going to recommend, and I decide to check. So let's take a look at Doug's range just for a second. Here's Doug's range. If you take a look at all cards, let's call it under a 10, there's a fair amount of combos. You got your 9s, 8s, 7s, all of the baby pocket pairs, all of the suited connectors. There's a ton of his range that he would just fold right away. And so my idea was to go ahead and check to see if he would take a stab at this pot. Now, of course, I go ahead and check, and he bets 1600, which is 2/3 pot. In hindsight, I do regret not betting flop, but once I go ahead and take a check route and he starts using a polarized size, meaning like 2/3 or higher, my action is pretty clear, and the line I'm going to take for the rest of this hand is going to be pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and take another perspective and take a look at the solver output. So before we even get into the decision tree, it's worth noting that all of my inputs are fairly standard. I'm using multiple betting sizes, a small one, a big one, as well as an overbet. I'm allowing the out of position player to donk lead, and I'm also allowing both players to raise. Starting at the top of the decision tree, no surprises. It's a 100% bet from us. However, we go ahead and take the check route. So let's just take a look at what the rest of the decision tree looks like if we go that route. When we check, Doug has several different options. Because we have the range and the nut advantage, 80% of Doug's action is going to be a check. As a small blind 3-better, we're going to have a really big nut and range advantage on this particular board. So most of the time we're going to be betting. However, in this particular case, once we check, the in position player should be doing a whole lot of checking as well. As you can see from the solver output, 79% of Doug's range that we gave him is going to be a check. In this particular instance, Doug bet 2/3 pot. So there's roughly 24 bigs. He bet about 16 bigs. Let's go ahead and select that action. On my side, in my specific holding, I'm just going to be doing a lot of calling with my queens. So we make the call and off to a turn. So the turn is the 8 of hearts, which brings in a lot of backdoor outs in case he had a hand like ace 5, ace 9, ace 10, all of the ace X of hearts, king X of hearts like king jack, king 10, king 9 of hearts. They have now all gained equity. To be honest, I'm expecting the turn to go check check pretty often, but let's take a look at what happens.
That's pretty interesting. Like if he did have any big bet here, it looks like about, if I remember correctly,
Doug bets 3,900, which is about 2/3 bet. Let's take a look at what solver suggests for us to do. So here I'm checking 99% of my range once I've taken the check route on the flop, which is what I did. Doug has a number of betting sizes that he can use. Pot is roughly around 56 big blinds. Doug goes roughly around this 2/3 sizing. Now, given our specific hand, there's a couple of things that we can do. We're never folding. We're either going to call or raise a little bit of the time. But notice all the green in the distribution. We're just going to be doing a lot of calling, which is what we do. Don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button. It really feeds into the YouTube algorithm to find others just like you who may enjoy the content as well. And if you're looking to improve your poker game, y'all need to make sure to head over to pokercoaching.com. There's a ton of value on this website, from the 1,700 quizzes that you can take to improve your game, the many courses you can take in a variety of topics. If you're looking for something faster, there's webinars and classes. And for someone who wants a more regular study routine, they can head over to challenges and get one of these started. The one that was really helpful for me was the 30-day cash game challenge. This is actually something that I've taken every single year that I've been with the platform. So for the last 2.5 years. All in all, there's a ton of content that you can go through. And if you want to take a 3-day pass to look at everything, y'all look in my link in the description below. So the river is a king of hearts, which is pretty interesting. Certain hands, for example, like king jack or king 10 of diamonds or clubs, now turn into trips. Sometimes he has some king 8 combinations, like king 8 of clubs, king 8 of diamonds, that is now turned into a boat. And then there are some weaker hands too that gets there, like ace X of hearts now has a flush. And then of course it's Doug. He's a great player. If he senses weakness, he may continue to barrel with all of his bluffs. But let's take a look at what the solver suggests for us to do on a king of hearts river. For our particular hand, we're going to be checking 100% of the time, which is what we did. And we get an instant check by Doug. And of course, you guys know what the outcome is. Doug checks with his straight. Funny thing is that even the jack 10 of hearts, which is a backdoor flush, that is a pure check as well. This is a really interesting hand to me because of two things. Number one is process-wise, I definitely missed the check on the flop. However, I did have a reason for checking that flop, albeit in the future, I'd rather just bet. Now, given the check line that I've taken, the rest of my line totally makes sense. I did want to go back though and see how the hand should have been played had I just bet my nutted range advantage. So all the way in the beginning, you can see that there's two bet sizes. There's a large betting size, around 75% pot, or a typical standard C betting size around 33% pot. In the future, if I were to replay this hand, I'm going to use one of these two betting sizes. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to go ahead and start with a 1/3 betting size. Now, Doug's particular hand, even though we don't have Jack 10 off in his range, which would have been a pretty wide range if he included the offsuits. But let's just say in that particular example, he had Jack 10 suited. You're seeing that he's doing some calling, but a ton of raising. So let's go ahead and proceed with raising because after all, he has the nuts. With bottom set, there are some re-raises that we have. but predominantly we're going to be calling. Once we get raised on the flop, we're going to be doing a checking. As you can see, solver is doing 100% checking here. And with the 8 of hearts on the turn, Doug's Jack 10 is still very much the nuts. And there's only going to be one betting size here, which is roughly about 73%. And with the pocket queens on our side, we're going to be doing a ton of calling. This was the last thing that I thought was really interesting. Even when the river paired up, our queens never donks out. In fact, our queens is doing pure checking. But I suspect that we're pure checking our bow to 1, keep all of his bluffs in, and 2, not get in a situation where he could turn a hand like King Jack, King 10 into a bluff and potentially make us overfold. So again, we go ahead and check here, and even with his Jack 10s, he's just doing pure checking. Now here's the really interesting part. What if he didn't check? What if he bet? And in this case, what if he bet 72% pot? Interestingly enough, our queens actually have some folds in them. But predominantly here, we're doing a ton of calling, never any raising. Anyway, I thought this hand was interesting for so many different reasons. I just wanted to make sure that there's not bigger leaks in my game that I'm missing out on. But more importantly, I just wanted to see if there was any part of my mechanics that needs correction. And, you know, look, I'm pretty happy with the way I played. Once I took a check line on the flop, but I also recognize that I tend to do a lot of checking and that I'm going to have to start betting my nut and range advantage. So this hand is pretty cool. You know, it's always nice to have a reminder to go back to basics. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that hand. That hand was super good. Tons of opinions all over the place. Based off of my research, those are my key findings. Hope you guys enjoyed that one.